I started the South Australian Youth Forum when I was 17, back in 2021, with the aim of creating space for my voice and the voices of my peers to be heard at decision-making tables we're too often excluded from. In rooms where decisions about child safety and child protection are made, our voices are still too absent. In the end, the measure of how well we protect children will not be found in our policies, but in whether young people can look back and say, you heard us and you stood by us. Thank you. And I'll now pass over to our first SA Youth Forum speaker, Sienna.
Every person who has experienced homelessness carries trauma, some of it because of the constant moving, the insecurity, the constant fear of not having somewhere safe to go, or the way we are treated, pushed aside or ignored by the very systems and institutions that claim to exist for our protection. Safe and stable housing is a right, and until we treat it as one, young people will continue to be failed by a system that tells us to prepare for the future while refusing to give us the chance to have one. We need change. I'll now pass over to Ragu.
Born in Malaysia, I spent the last 7 years of my life living in Australia. Where do I fit in, I ask you? At every opportunity, the colour of my skin and not the content of my character has been a source of judgment used to discriminate. We like to think we're on top of racism, that we aren't like other nations. Unfortunately, that's only the case if you aren't facing it. Every day we delay, another young person is told that who they are doesn't matter, and I will not accept that. We should not accept that, and I refuse to be silent about it. We need change. I'll now pass over to Lachlan.
One thing that has been lost in the current conversation about domestic violence is child abuse. In 2021, an estimated 2.7 million Australians had been victims of childhood abuse, 1.5 million being physical and 1.9 million being sexual. Unfortunately, we know that the vast majority of victims will never report their abuse to police. The plight of children suffering from coercive control, emotional abuse, and child neglect cannot be put in the too hard bucket. We know the issue. We need change. I now pass to Holly.
He received a slap on the wrist of injustice. The system failed to protect us. Lost and forgotten remain the memories that haunt us. I don't stand alone in this injustice. We stand silenced. Silenced by a system that cares more about reputations than repercussions. We need change. I will now invite Abhinav to speak.
When we talk about family, domestic, and sexual violence, the focus often falls on what happens behind closed doors, but the reality is its impact doesn't stop at the home. Children and young people often carry the weight of this trauma into every other part of their lives, and I have seen this firsthand. It's about making sure schools and community groups such as sporting clubs, etc., are really places where kids can show up, and these places are trauma-informed and they're supportive, often to the invisible pains that these kids are experiencing. We need change.